there still is not an explicit quid pro quo here. So
Exactly.
Is this a big bowl of nothing?
I agree with you completely. There's no quid pro quo. There's no explicit promise or threat here.
Got that? As Gayle King yesterday on CBS's This Morning stated, after actually reading the transcript of the phone conversation between President Trump and the president of the Ukraine, she said, as far as any quid pro quo, it's a big bowl of nothing. And Paula Reid also stated there is no quid pro quo. Sorry, Democrats. However, we'll take a look at Andrea Mitchell. Even though there's no quid pro in the transcript, she thinks that if you use a Godfather secret language super decoder ring, you could somehow find that there is a quid pro quo in there, blink, blink, from the secret language of the Godfather.
That initial paragraph seems to be asking him, do me a favor, asking him to find a Hillary Clinton email connection to the origins of the Mueller probe.
Yes.
That's what he's really, because Ukraine, Manafort was representing the Ukrainian opposition, the pro-Russian government that was ousted.
It's not explicit, but the context certainly suggests
people have analogized this kind of conversation to when, a Godfather would say, I want you to do something. Everyone knows what is involved here.
So is Andrea Mitchell saying that the president of the Ukraine is some sort of mobster who is able to understand this secret Godfather language? I don't know. Maybe you should ask her. Now, let's take a look at a very, very flustered Stephanopoulos who does not like the sad news about the transcript that his own reporter, Terry Moran, delivers to him.
And the question will be, before the country, are those sentences, are the president's actions in the national interest or in his own personal political interest? He will argue corruption is a huge problem in Ukraine. It's part of the problem with giving money to Ukraine. It ends up in the wrong hands. President Obama was aware of that. The EU is aware of that. And he will argue that Vice President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who was on the board of directors of a major energy company which is involved in some of that corruption, was a legitimate subject of national interest. And that's what he's talking to the president of Ukraine about.
But David, I understand that'll be the defense. Does it pass the smell test once he explicitly mentions the name Joe Biden?
Well, Joe Biden was involved in the dismissal of a prosecutor. That prosecutor actually had dropped the investigation of the company that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, was on. So that'll be hashed out.
Finally, let's look again at the full CBS This Morning report about the Trump transcript that's sure to overload the diapers of all those Democrats who think that they can use a perceived quid pro quo that doesn't exist to pull off an impeachment.
But there still is not an explicit quid pro quo here. So
Exactly.
Is this a big bowl of nothing, or is there really something here? What will be the process now to determine how significant this is?
Well, legally, it's important to note that the Justice Department has looked at what happened in this phone call, and they did not clear him on all violations of law, but they said, we don't see a campaign finance violation here, right? So it seems going forward, this will be, like so many other things in the Trump administration, a political fight on Capitol Hill. And it'll be up to Democrats and Republicans to decide if they believe this rises to the level of conduct that should support articles of impeachment. It's an open question. It's murky. I agree with you completely. There's no quid pro quo. There's no explicit promise or threat here. That's great for the president's attorneys. That's what they'll argue. I agree with you completely. There's no quid pro quo. There's no explicit promise or threat here. I agree with you completely. There's no quid pro quo. There's no explicit promise or threat here. I agree with you completely. There's no quid pro quo. There's no explicit promise or threat here.
Subscribe to the Dummy Funnies now!